jump right into the timeline. So like Joe said, he went missing on November 23rd, 1991. He went on this hunt with two of his buddies from high school, Mark Maupin, and I don't know if I have the name of the other guy, but so three of them arrived at their hunting spot, which I'm assuming would have been early in the morning, 6:30 a.m., and their plan was to split up until 6:30. So at this time of the year at that location, I believe sunset was around 4:40 p.m. So their plan was to split up, hunt all day, and then meet back up at the car around 6:30. At least that's what they agreed to.
Sure.
So this would end up being the last time his friends saw Corey or heard from him. Back then they didn't have cell phones. So, and I had no indication that they had any kind of radio communication or anything like that on them. So last known sighting of Corey would have been in the morning of the 23rd. So according to reports of that day, the afternoon was cold and there wasn't, they didn't really see any elk. And one of the guys told the investigators that they were in the correct spot and they've seen elk there lots of times in the past, but strangely, there were literally no elk in the area that day, which...
there's some theories around that.
Yeah, there's some theories.
And that also answers our question. They've been to that area, so they probably scouted that area. If he's saying they knew there's elk there, they probably scouted it, so they knew where they were going, which I think lends, again, they split up. That happens when you hunt. You don't hunt next to people. But if they knew that, if they said, oh, there's normally this, they probably scouted it, probably had positions where they wanted to go, and were probably familiar with the area.
Yeah, and that it's an interesting note that they made a point to mention they didn't see any elk in the area. I won't go into it in too much detail, but some other theorists in the missing persons genre, the guy who's done all those books, one of his, connections to a lot of these cases is that the area seems void of wildlife on the day the person goes missing. Mm-hmm. So, you can think of whatever you want to think about maybe it's just coincidence.
I think animals are very intuitive.
Maybe.
You talk about they've done studies like dogs and snakes and stuff, like several days before an earthquake occurs will vacate an area.
Yeah.
They sense things.
So maybe Bigfoot was rolling through the area. And
Yeah.
So all right, it's still the 23rd, and now it's 6:30 p.m. The guys got back to their car, and Corey wasn't there. So he never arrived. There was no evidence that he showed up. So the two other guys contacted the sheriff department. So 6:30 p.m., the Wasco County Sheriff's Office became the lead agency in the search for Corey. The SAR mission included helicopters with special search capabilities. It looked like they had people on horseback. They also, the news article I read pointed this out, so it must have been a big deal, that they had 7 of the best trained search dogs in the world from the Rocky Mountain Search and Rescue team from Salt Lake City. So they had
everything in their favor.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool. A total of 250 searchers scoured 12 square miles for about 10 days and didn't find a single trace of Corey. One of the searchers, Bruce Heckelman, he was a local spokesman for the American Search Dogs, said the following: "It is now considered the most expensive search and rescue effort in Oregon. This was the most massive search conducted in Oregon with more than $500,000 spent. It's really frustrating because you'd think you'd find some clues, but so far no one has." So
yeah, if he's carrying, when you're carrying a rifle out there, it's heavy. He's got ammunition, stuff like that. So if he fell or whatever, you think you'd find that. You think you'd find something that he had.
And I've always thought about this when I've gone hunting. If I got lost, I may periodically fire a shot into the sky to create noise.
You got the rule of threes, right?
Yeah.
It's 3 shots and then wait, 3. That's like when you're lost, that's the thing. It's like threes. If you do threes and then alternate, it's like boom, 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 pause, boom, 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 and like very rhythmically, and that's what you're supposed, if you have the ammunition to do that.
Yeah, you'd obviously want to conserve your ammo, but you know, that's something I've always thought about if I ever got lost in northern Wisconsin, and you know, one of the ways you could try and get found is by just firing your gun off into the air. So the official search was terminated on December 1st, but from what I read, a lot of volunteers and family members kept searching for weeks, and they actually got the good graces of the sheriff. From what I read, the sheriff's department required the searchers to be certified in search and rescue, but they could continue to do it on their own without, you know, sheriff's officers being out there with them. So
yeah, it's kind of a weird thing because all you could be like, we're not searching,
we're just going hiking. Yeah. So the Wasco County Sheriff's Office at the time was so perplexed by this disappearance and the lack of evidence that they actually called in the FBI for assistance in kind of helping them determine what happened here. I didn't find any other evidence explaining, did the FBI actually show up? Did they play a role in the search or the analysis of, you know, any, you know, evidence they found?
Just making an assumption. I don't know this, but I'm guessing because you didn't find something, they probably didn't get involved. Because what is it? Typically it's because he was a minor, but it would have to be like a kidnapping case.
Yeah, I don't want to speak and get it wrong, but I'll just say that typically, in most cases, the FBI does not get involved in, you know, just someone went off into the woods and went missing.
Yeah.
It's more of abduction cases.
Sure, or linked to a possible serial killer. Or
yeah,
things like that.
Stuff like that.
Well, it just makes me think because there's other cases that are similar to this where they just show up.
Yeah.
And you wonder, it's like, okay, what were they working in the area that
Hunter
matches?
out east.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like, okay, he disappeared there and they just showed up without being called.
Yeah.
Were they working some sort of case that wasn't public knowledge that disappearance fit the description of? And then for whatever reason, this case, all right, maybe there's no serial killers in the area that they're actively tracking.
Yeah. So it's just interesting, you know, who knows, maybe the sheriff does this on all their, you know, cases where they don't have, you know, anything to go on. Just maybe they just call them for advice. Who knows? Yeah. So the case went cold for almost a full year until September of 1992. Two hunters were hunting a ridge 10 miles from the point where Corey was last seen when they found his backpack and rifle. Another searcher found Corey's jacket more than a mile away from his other belongings. Other items found included his hunting license, compass, and other clothing belonging to him. I have some questions written out at the end of this kind of that are puzzling. And one of the things they never found were his boots. And this is not the first case we've talked about where the boots aren't found. I believe the Charles McCullough case, when you had your famous 4-minute segment on the History Channel.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think they found the boots in that case either.
No, that was the one. I thought that was the one where it looked like he melted into his boots.
Oh, maybe.
And they found like parts of bone in the boot.
Oh, yeah.
But nothing else. That was what was weird about it.
But we've done other cases where certain items are found, but the boots are never found. And boots, unless you've never gone hiking, boots are heavy, clunky. You know, they're not, if you just like tore them off and threw them onto the ground.
Sure.
Unless you like threw them into a river or a stream, I just can't picture boots just disappearing, you know?
Yep.
It's not like an animal's going to come and eat them.
Yeah.
So that's just interesting. And
I wonder if they're leather, if the animals will chew on the leather, but they won't consume it all the way.
But you'd still find like the rubber sole. I mean, it's only been November to September. You know, that's not that long of a time period. But we'll get into some of the weird questions I have on this case at the end. So the hunters notified the authorities that they found all this stuff. And so a little more detail on kind of where his items were found. His items were located in an elevation of 6,500 feet and 10 miles from where he was last seen. So another kind of, so that's not to say he didn't hike up, you know, the side of the mountain 10 miles away from where their car was, but it's just a little unusual when you hear the conditions he would have had to hike in.
Sure.
So a quarter mile from his backpack, searchers found small bone fragments and one tooth. This would turn out to be the only evidence of Corey's actual remains that they would find. They never found a skull, you know, bigger bones like a femur or, you know, hip bones or ribs or anything, and one tooth. Not all the teeth, one tooth, which amazingly was enough for the coroner's office to actually identify
using
dental records. But I'm just kind of, I mean, I guess I understand maybe not finding all the other teeth if, predators, like we said, there's bobcats in the area and cougars and black bears.
Yeah, I was just looking up the timeline for body decomposition.
Yeah.
And they're saying it can be 3 weeks to several years, obviously based on climate. But they're saying in tropical climates, skeletonization, so like where everything is just down to skeleton, can occur in weeks. But tundra areas where it's colder can take several years.
Yeah.
So like there should have been potentially like, obviously the bones will be there, but like even potentially some like skin remnant and things like that.
Like
that should have been
mummified.
Almost
dried out.
Yeah.
Not to get too grizzly.
Yeah. But I'm just saying like with the cooler temperatures, it never gets hot. Yeah. When winter hits, it's going to almost, embalm them naturally.
The only thing I can think of is maybe one of the cats dragged the remains off into an area that wasn't searched.
Okay.
I mean, that's possible.
Yep.
I mean,
and that's why maybe you're finding it scattered.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
And maybe they just, unfortunately, that was the only two pieces of, remains they found.
Yeah.
But either way, it's just kind of interesting. I think did we ever do the episode on the kid where his dad only found a tooth in his skull cap?
No, the one that I feel like is closest one is one where the FBI seemed shady in it, and it showed his dad the skull that wasn't the same one. I think that's the one you might be thinking of. Remember, he said that's not the one that we found in the ground, and it looked like somebody had swapped it out for whatever reason.
Yeah, so I don't know. This again,
go back to all previous episodes.
I know
to learn more about that one.
Again, this is kind of another commonality we've seen in other cases where, you would think more remains would be in the area and they'd find something bigger like a femur or something like that, but nothing. So, so the sheriff stated that Corey would have been in snow up to his waist for more than 5 miles at the point the discovery was made. So this is what reminds me of the Charles McCullough case.
Yeah.
One of my questions was, well, I'll get into that. Okay. Sorry, I keep wanting to get into my questions.
Yeah, let's finish the timeline, and then we'll get into all the craziness.
So an article in the Eugene Register dated September 18th, 1992 reported the following. Authorities know the snow was deep there because a helicopter had spotted tracks during an intensive search for Fay last November. The tracks turned out to be animals, but the snow was almost waist deep, and that was a good 3 miles from where the items were discovered yesterday. The article later states that searchers didn't believe Fay could have gone as far as he apparently did. An interesting sidelight to this finding is that a September 19th, 1992 article in the Eugene Register clearly states that Corey's grandparents told the press that the boy was trained to follow the stream downhill if he ever became lost. So you've got now we'll get into some questions here before we get into theories. So he was trained if he got lost to go downhill. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't make sense that he would go up. Snow is waist deep. I've gone skiing out in the Rockies and skied in some really thick powder that kind of comes up to your like knees.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to walk in.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have done it for 100 yards, let alone 5 miles, 10 miles up elevation.
Yeah.
Like
it's hard walking up elevation without snow. Yeah.
So I find it really hard to believe that he would have been able to, hike that far in those conditions. But Charles McCullough, again, another case where how many he went almost 8 miles or
no, it was like 13 or 14 and he didn't have hiking gear.
And weren't there snow drifts
clothes. Yeah, some of the snow drifts were up to 20 feet.
20 feet, yeah.
So, and he was like in normal clothes. Yeah. Like he wasn't even prepared to be outside.
Yeah. So, all right, we're going to get into, here's some just questions I had about this case and observations, and you can comment on them, Joe.
I'm sure I will.
So the first one was Corey was found 3,000 feet higher in elevation than where he was last seen and 10 miles from the point he should have been hunting. Could he have covered that distance and elevation in less than a day in waist deep snow? I say no. I don't know how you
I would say 95% of the population couldn't.
Yeah.
Unless he was some super athlete. But even then, like, why? The question is why. You leave your gear and you're going uphill through snow, like what would cause someone to do that?
I mean, hypothermia potentially.
But even then, you'd feel like, so if he had paradoxical undressing,
Yeah.
I feel like this is an assumption now, and I'll look it up, but I feel like animals when they're wounded, people, anything, when you go to ground, typically they go downhill.
Yeah.
Like gravity pulls you, you're trying to do things easier, not harder.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're kind of out of your head, are you going to really go up in a harder direction, or are you going to stumble your way down whatever where gravity is taking you already?
Yeah.
And even then, if he's doing that stuff and kicking away his clothing items, where are they?
Yeah. So another observation I had was they never did find Corey's pants, boots, or socks. So it was Charles McCullough. His boots were never found because a ranger.
You're right. It was his sock.
Yeah.
They found his socks with toe
bones
and stuff in it. That's what it was. I think
so.
Right.
The connection here for the Charles McCullough case was they never found his boots, and a ranger in that case had stated that he always finds boots when he recovers remains from people. So, he goes, boots are really heavy. They don't disappear. They don't disintegrate quickly. I mean, over 100 years they would, but not a year.
Sure.
So it's very strange that, his pants were never found, which, maybe animals would shred up, if he was wearing like jeans or something, animals would probably shred that up and use it for nesting over the course of a year.
Yeah, I think but over a year, I still feel like you'd be able to tell they were jeans. You know what I mean? They might be ripped up and chewed up, but you'd still be able to tell. Like I've
been hiking where I see people's like t-shirts in the woods.
Yeah, and like pretty tattered.
Yeah.
Or like
but
find
they're still
stuff,
there.
Yeah, they're still
plants
there.
Are growing through them, and
yeah, like you can tell they've been there for a while.
Yeah. That's unusual. We already talked about this one a little bit, but how the discovery of only bone fragments and one tooth, there was no, skull, ribs, any of the bigger bones. And, I go on to write, even though the sheriff sent 30 people to do a grid search of the ridgeline, searchers never found large bones like, femur, ribs, hip, vertebrae, or anything like that. So obviously animals could have dragged away the remains to maybe a bear took it to its den, or I don't know.
Yeah, but I was even looking. So scavenging, it's saying after skeletonization. So let's assume it's full skeleton.
Yeah.
And this is from Wikipedia. If scavenging animals do not destroy or remove the bones, acids in fertile soils may take about 20 years to completely dissolve the skeleton. So
okay.
What I take from that is maybe it's possible animals can destroy or remove bones, but again, I've come across deer carcasses. That are like in bogs in peat moss areas, which are supposed to like really preserve bodies, where it's all skeleton. You can tell it's been dead for a very long time.
Yeah.
And all the bones are there.
Yeah.
Like varmint will eat the antlers of animals because it's very nutrient rich.
Yeah.
But typically the bones, like you find them, they're there.
Yeah, and I mean the predators in the area. So, bobcats are pretty small. I don't know exactly how big they are, but they're not. I don't know that a bobcat's gonna be able to drag away a grown adult male.
Or even, why would they need to? Or
I mean, a cougar, I guess, might drag away a carcass to save it for later. A black bear probably would just scavenge.
Yeah,
it's not gonna drag the carcass. So it'll probably just not to get too graphic or anything, but probably just feed wherever it is.
Yeah, if there's no threat to them, they're going to do it right there.
And I mean, grizzlies have been known to eat whole chunks of people.
Yes,
and bone included. But I don't think black bears are much smaller. Now, I'm making the assumption that these are the black bears like we have in Wisconsin, not the kind of black bears where they're at the size of grizzlies. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so like you get out to that area and they're a little bit hardier and bigger because they have to be.
Yeah.
Versus here, it's, we don't have very remote areas
in
Wisconsin.
Yeah, I'm just making an assumption, listeners, on what black bear means. So Joe can